Late afternoon on Friday, PwC Nigeria released this new 12-page report titled Structural Transformation and Jobless Growth in Nigeria. So we lay our hands on Andrew S. Nevin, who is a partner and chief economist and one of the authors of this report, to be here in the studios with us this morning to unpack this report on the day and the week, technically, where we're having the fourth quarter 2017 unemployment data for Nigeria from the Statistics Office. What a very important time to put this through. Thank you for coming, Andrew. It's good to have you here. This report speaks largely to Nigeria's very naughty jobless growth, unemployment, and how we can move things forward. So the first question is this. What's the main highlight of this report, if you put it in a summary? 12 pages.
Well, I think that what policymakers should take away from this is we're really in a jobless crisis. We have 20% unemployment. We have 20% underemployment. Our workforce is growing at 4% a year over the last 6 or 7 years. If we don't create jobs, what's going to happen to Nigeria?
So where are the socio-economic drivers of unemployment in Nigeria? Why is it so difficult for us to tame this unemployment thing?
Well, we have so many sectors that would boom under the right conditions, but we all know that the ease of doing business is a problem. We've done a lot of work on it with the PwC committee and Dr. Jamoke, but we're not there yet. And I know so many projects. We have so many investors at PwC, domestic and foreign, who want to do things, and they just still find it very tough to do here. And so people don't get hired. If we don't have the investment, we're not going to get the employment.
So if we're doing ease of business and folks are not hiring, and the latest PMI last month for May show at least that employment sub-indices, what is a sub-index, show that we're not doing much in that area. So what do we need to galvanize that?
Well, you go back to ease of doing business. We've said the last few months the most important sector is actually real estate. You can get real estate going, it's going to start to absorb a lot of people. Because if you think about it, when you build houses, you build offices, you have all the construction material which has to be sourced locally. You have the plumbers, the carpenters, the electricians, then you caterers, because these people have to be fed on that. But if you looked at the latest economic numbers, the real estate sector went backwards 10% year over year. So you had some good news in agriculture. Obviously, oil and gas is some good news. But then if you have real estate at minus 10%, the country can't move forward.
In terms of when we say jobless or the unemployment in Nigeria, what are the basic misconceptions about what is unemployment, what is underemployment, and what is the jobless or job losses data? Can you try and separate this for us?
Well, I think what people need to remember, of course, is as sectors grow, it doesn't mean there's going to be more employment. Because, in fact, we also want things to be more productive. So if we take agriculture, we've done well in agriculture the last 3 or 4 years, and production is up. But the number of people employed in agriculture is not any higher, because agriculture is getting more efficient.
No, the figures are higher because the government officials keep rolling out figures.
No, but the figures for production are higher, but not for employment, for agriculture, because we're getting more efficient. And, of course, PwC has come out and said we need more mechanization. So we're going to produce more food with fewer people. So I think that, one of the misconceptions is that growth in an industry results in more employment. So we show here, for example, even if there's growth in manufacturing, it doesn't actually make that much more employment. Where we get the best bang for employment is when we grow the service sector. And so one of the questions is whether we really should be that focused on manufacturing, or we sort of, in a sense, skip over, a little bit like India, skip over the manufacturing phase and really try to drive our service economy.
In terms of sectoral employment trends, what does this report reveal?
Well, services to begin with, services are almost 60% of employment. They're already very large. We know oil and gas is not very big. It's only 10% of the economy on that. And services encompasses a lot of things. I talked a little bit about real estate. At the high end, you've got ICT. You've got Nollywood, which is, fantastic. So the thing about the services industry broadly is if we can drive it, it drives employment at both ends. So at one end, we have the vocational training and vocational work, so the carpenters and the plumbers and the caterers. At the other end, we have the potential in this country for really a fantastic ICT sector. We've got a lot of smart young people. They want to be involved in these communities. And the great thing about ICT that India showed is it's easier to export because you don't have to go through the physical infrastructure problems to export ICT.
But what we're doing with the ERGP is to focus more on the brick and mortar heavy industry for exports. Do you think we need to rethink this particular part of this transformation or structural transformation we're pursuing?
Yes, we do. So, I mean, the traditional model that for a country to get richer, manufacturing will rotate here and will export to the developed world. And there's a couple of problems with that. I mean, one problem is the developed world populations are shrinking. Europe's population is aging and shrinking. Even North America's working age population is no longer growing. So there aren't growing markets. If we're going to manufacture things, we should be exporting them within ECOWAS and within Africa. That's much more important for us than these external markets.
Okay, I like that. But what should we focus on if we want to do manufacturing? Because if we're manufacturing cars, who's going to buy those cars from us? So do you think we should go heavy duties or light manufacturing?
Well, I don't, the duties, not duties. I mean, I think on we don't need that. What we need for manufacturing, local manufacturing that serves African needs, is we need power. Now, the power is one of the most frustrating sectors for us because in a way, in our view, it's easily solvable. Because of the advances in technology, we all have this image in our mind of large-scale power production, large-scale grid. But technology is changing. You can produce power in situ. I can't go out of the house between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day because we have so much solar power. We're starting slowly, but if we are able to tap into that and we can produce power locally, we're going to have all the light manufacturing capability that we need. And of course, if ECOWAS works, we have a market that's going to 800 million people.
So we need 3 million jobs annually, average.
That we need.
On average, yes, that Nigeria needs.
Yeah, exactly. So
if you balance out what we call our job growth, about 1.6% over the last 10 years, so technically thereabout, and then our labor growth is about 3.9%, almost 4%. That's a very serious imbalance skewed into the labor growth rather than job growth.
Well, I think the country should be viewing this as a crisis. I understand we're heading to election. I understand people are distracted. But how many years can we go where we have 1.6% job growth and almost 4% in terms of the number of young people that are in the employment age? I mean, eventually that equation is going to break down on that. And from the policy viewpoint, there has to be urgent attention to what we need to do to create more jobs.
One of the things that gets some folks on the street frustrated, that we've seen a few years of economic boom, but high unemployment in Nigeria. How did we arrive at this kind of situation?
Well, because we were growing, it was very artificial, right? So we had large oil inflows. At the time, we were the largest importer of champagne. We essentially took the surplus from an oil. It was either, in some cases, diverted, as we know. In other cases, it was simply consumed. So there wasn't a lot of actual investment in things that would create jobs. I mean, it was creating jobs in France. It was creating jobs as we imported electronics from China and Japan and Korea, creating jobs there, but it wasn't creating any jobs here. So, I mean, we know, because we've talked about it before, all of the surplus that we had in a $100 oil era was essentially wasted. So when the oil price dropped to 40 and then 30, we're starting from a base where we don't have any cushion from that's invested in the country.
You talk about the services sector. Let's look at these three lessons for this three-stage economic development process, if we look at a few countries. And what do you consider as the 3 stages that we need to focus on?
Well, the normal idea was always agriculture, move to manufacturing, export to richer countries, and then move on to services. So a place like Singapore has gone through that. Japan has gone through that. I think what we're saying here is that doesn't necessarily look like the path for us, that in fact, we should be almost a little bit like with the mobile telephony, but skipping more from agriculture directly to this service-oriented economy. And partially for the jobs reason. I mean, as we show in the paper, more manufacturing doesn't necessarily result in a lot more jobs. And in technical terms, we show it technically, economically, but the important thing is the sectors that are going to create the most jobs in the country are in the service area.